today. This is my setup. I have some argon over there, just straight argon, cheap MIG welder from Harbor Freight. Poor welder's friend, grinder. Get rid of the boo-boos. I got the helmet with the mod that lets you put batteries in, turn it on and off. That's kind of cool. What else we got going on over here? Oh, the reason I'm making this video was to show off my incredibly poor welding skills. I managed to get this bung. This is a stainless. I couldn't find anything but stainless. I mean, they're out there, but a stainless steel notched bung. I just figured I'd try a notched one. It worked pretty well. I just tacked it in, and I went around several times trying to get a decent weld. And then I put soapy water on it, sealed off both ends of the pipe, blew in through one end, looked for the bubbles. Yeah, there might be a tiniest little bubble still coming out when I really blow hard into it, but I mean, there shouldn't be that much PSI on this thing anyway, so I can't imagine it being an issue. Anyway, so I got that one done, and the idea here is, this is the pipe I got from some Z store, I can't remember the name of it, but it is supposedly, I mean, we'll know when we go to fit it, supposedly this pipe will work, you know, and put this right here in basically the stock location where the exhaust pipe used to be, you know, where about where the resonator or the cat would go on a stock setup. So my idea is I'll just use this. This is my pipe. I didn't want to cut holes and screw that thing up, so I bought this little extension piece. I built my little air-fuel ratio bung adapter here. So if I really screwed this up, you know, I can just do it over and over. I was going to cut it off and try again, cut off again. You know, I had about 3 shots at it before I ran out of hose. But it worked the first time. So, I mean, it came out. I mean, it's a horrible weld, okay? It stinks. It stinks on ice. But it doesn't leak. And with equipment and my skill set, it's about as good as I can hope for. The muffler, of course, isn't going to go here. It'll go much further out on the car. But I got one of those $70 eBay special, get about 8 pieces of tubing bent different ways. I think there's a couple 45s, a couple 90s, a couple straights, and a couple curved pieces. I figured with all that pipe, I ought to be able to make the simple, I think all this thing has to do is go back, turn, and make another turn like that. I think that's, if I remember right, how that setup is. You know, I could probably get the old pipe and lay it down here on the ground. In fact, we can just go ahead and do that. Do I have it? Yeah, it's right here. Well, trashy. There we go. So this is what I have to do. Something along those lines. Okay, that's got a little bend in it there. I don't know if I'll even need that or not. So, yeah, so I remember it goes, I have to start right about here, obviously. Go here, make a 90, and another 90, and I'm out. That's it. So, and that was just cut off at the muffler, and I just, you know, whatever. So, it doesn't look like there should be that much to it. You know, famous last words, right? The other thing I'm going to do is, now this was set up for a cat. I'm not going to have a cat on this thing or a resonator. It's just going to be a straight through. Somewhere in here, I'll put a hanger, and I'll secure that to the transmission, a solid, you know, weld on a mount, because this is all mounted together. This doesn't need the flex. In fact, it'd probably be better if this is securely mounted to the trans, so that you don't transmit any vibration along this tube. I mean, the trans bolted to the engine, the pipe's bolted to the engine. This can be bolted to the engine, or at least up to here, you know, can be bolted to the engine. I really don't know how I don't know how I'm going to do this. I might end up putting a hard mount here, and of course there's the soft mount down by the tailpipe, and this can just free hang. But when it's plugged in and clamped together, it'll hold this pipe and keep this thing from moving around too much. But that's it. I'm still running the I think that's the 88. Yeah, that's the 88 California automatic 300ZX, the Z31 computer. and that's the one that has the weird California codes, you know, just ignore that. And I'm running a resistor pack on it, which is weird because when I read the factory service manual, it said the resistance values at the pins should be 1.5 ohms for each of the injectors. Well, 1.5 ohms, I mean, that's low impedance injector resistance. High injector reading is like 11, 12, 13 ohms. So I'm a little confused. Everybody says you have to use the high impedance injectors on this particular year. But again, if you look at the factory service manual, it will tell you to read the pins at the connector, at that pink connector down there, where the injectors are plugged in, and you can read, you know, I think it's 101 through 106 to ground, or 101 to 106 to battery positive, whatever it is to read through the injector. It says 1.5 ohms. But to be on the safe side, I'll run the resistor pack anyway, because just that's what everybody says you have to do. You know, I just don't get it though. I mean, I guess it's possible that you could have a low resistance, high impedance, which doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me because impedance is just the same as resistance except to an AC signal. So, you know, I don't get it. I just don't get it. But anyway, that's the setup. I might put the other math in here with the adjustable voltage and see if I can't tweak it so that when I go into closed loop, I get a better match of the green to the red. In other words, every once in a while it'll show lean, and the red light will take a long time to come on, or it's just not perfectly synced up, right? So thanks, truck. Anyway, so the idea is it's struggling to compensate, right? So the idea is if I get this over here and I tweak this resistor that's inside here to the point where I can better match the actual needs of the engine through the math without having for the computer to compensate. Oh God, really? Thank you. Then that would be a good thing to do. So my theory is if the red light comes on and stays on and you know it's not going off as fast as it should, then that would tend to tell me it's having to overcompensate. It's beyond that's adding fuel, so it's having to add fuel more and more to try to get speed. If that's the case, this needs to recognize more fuel, more airflow going through here. And the way you can figure that out is you could actually take a reading here, get a voltage reading. I think it varies, you know, from like 1 volt to 5 volts. It won't be that big of a range, but you know what I mean. The more voltage is the more air going through the system. I think that's how it works. I'll have to get what I'll do is I'll put a meter on here and I'll actually check it. You know, I'll see what the air is reading. I'll goose it and see if the voltage goes up or down. Whatever it is, you know, more air will do either more voltage or less voltage on this reading. And if I'm getting a red light that's staying on longer, not going off quickly enough, the assumption is the computer's trying to compensate for a lean condition. So all I got to do is tell this thing that, hey, more air is flowing than you think is, and that should make it work right. So I may do a little bit of quote unquote tuning for what you can do. The only tunable factor on this setup is this one compensating resistor here. And what's even weirder about that is the 88, 89s don't do that. They don't have this hooked up. So you'd have to go back to the 86, 87 version. I don't think the 85 had the same kind of O2 to make this functional. But this is a California one, and this California one does do something weird with this last signal. I mean, there's so many, it's so confusing. Jeff's ECU is not California, okay? Not California does not use this signal wire here. This is, for the California model, which is what I have, this is supposed to be a exhaust temperature reading, okay? There's supposed to be a thermistor in the exhaust pipe that gives it a resistance reading. Instead, this thing is hooked up to this thing, which has a resistor in here. So, you know, it's kind of like, I'm not doing it the way you're supposed to. So what I'm talking about trying to tune it may not work with this particular ECU. But I do know that the earlier ones did have this and did tell you you could tweak the mixture in here. So, I know it's a lot of talk. That's the plan. give me more of an excuse not to install the engine. Okay, now I have something new to work on, which means I don't get to install the engine in 2025. Maybe 2026 will be the grand finale. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying this and getting something out of it for anybody who's messing around with these things. It gives me something to do. Oh, here's something else I can talk about real quick. I may have already mentioned this in an earlier one. This is my speed sensor. It's a on off, a hard on, hard off. That's a funny name. Don't think dirty stuff. And it turns the if you make this connection on and off, it will trigger the self-cleaning coil and the self-cleaning function in the math. I tried hooking it up to Jeff's speed sensor, but as I think like I said, I may have already been here before. That that's like a Hall effect sensor or something like that. It's not an on-off. It's like a digital signal if you give it a voltage or something like that. It doesn't work. Okay, I hooked that up to these two wires. I spun the living daylights out of it. It did not trigger the cleaning function. If you tap these two together, though, it will trigger the cleaning function. So I know the cleaning function works. Just that sensor won't do it. So we're back to trying to figure out a way of getting a on-off signal to trigger that if you want to do that. The one thing I've been able to come up with, theoretically anyway, is to use some small, maybe put some neodymium magnets on the back of the wheel hub and get a little small a real reed switch somewhere in that same proximity that can trigger on and off. The thing about that is I don't know how many times it should go off for each revolution of the wheel. Is it one on off per RPM of the wheel? Is it 4? Is it 8? Is it 6? Who knows? I don't know. I do know that if you trigger it too often, because I actually hooked this up to something else that triggered it like much quicker, at like a 160 hertz, something like that, just to trigger it on and off. It will interpret that. This will interpret that as, oh, you're going too fast, and it will literally limit the speed of the car. So clearly, you don't want to do that. I mean, you got to make sure this is hooked up to some kind of reasonable speed sensor that approximates what the actual car is doing, not some crazy, contraption that just cycles on and off at a rapid pace. It's got to be the right speed, in other words. I don't know if I'll ever make that functional or not. It's even good to superheat that little wire in there. I don't know. It glows orange. Maybe you're shortening the life of the math. Anyway, that's all for now. Sorry for the ramble, but I just wanted to get you mainly up to date. My super bad welding taking place on that for you guys who grew up in the 70s. You know what I'm talking about. Later.